Hey everyone, we're going to do quadratic formula today. I'm going to also post a couple of links to some videos on going over the quadratic formula. There's normally some songs, ways to help people remember what each of them mean and kind of how to know it. So you will have to have the quadratic formula memorized. You see it right here. It's x equals opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Trust me, if you memorize it with going with the song, you'll know it. So looking at the notes, before we get into the actual quadratic formula, take a look at the opener. How would we solve this problem? We want to find the x-intercepts or the zeros, our solutions. In a perfect world, we're going to be able to factor. So two numbers that multiply together to be 10 that add up to be 7. We luck out, and that's going to be 5 and 2. And those are going to be each over x. So you're getting x plus 5, x plus 2 equals 0. We use the zero product property rule in order to set each of these equal to 0. So x plus 5 equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0. Subtract the 5 from both sides, subtract the 2 from both sides, and you get your two solutions of x equals negative 5, x equals negative 2. So those are the two x-intercepts or zeros. If we look at the next problem, two numbers that multiply together to be 3 that add up to be 5. Unfortunately, you can't do it. So you have to use the quadratic formula. I would say the quadratic formula is always used as a last case scenario. It does work for all of them, but as a last case scenario, normally factoring and solving by square roots and those other type of ways that we've learned are probably the better way to go. So last case scenario, use the quadratic formula. And like I had said before, it's x equals opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And that's all based on our quadratic equation being in standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c. There's our a, gets used twice. We have our b right here, that gets used twice. And then we have our c, and that gets used once. There's two different ways that you can get an answer. There's an exact answer. That's going to be in radical form. So that's saying that you have a square root. You could get a whole number also. There's an approximate answer. That means you're going to be getting a decimal. So they're both the exact same answer, and you have to be able to give the exact answer and like the approximate or rounded answer as a decimal. So let's take a look at this. The form ax squared plus bx plus c. So our a in this case is the 1. The b is the positive 5. And then the c is the positive 3. The key to all of this is you want to write it in order, the x squared, then the x and the constant, and it must be equal to 0. So if it's not equal to 0, you got to get everything onto the same side. If we actually go and solve this, so x equals opposite of b, so if b is 5, the opposite of b is negative 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, 5 squared. And remember, put that 5 in parentheses, because if it was a negative, you'd end up getting a positive when you square it. Minus 4, a is 1, c. So that's saying 4 times 1 times 3, and it's all over 2a. So 2 times our a, which is 1. Taking it further, starting to simplify, -5 plus or minus. Inside parentheses, you have 5 squared, which is 25. And then you're subtracting 4 times 1 times 3. So you're subtracting 12. So 25 minus 12 gives you 13, and it's all over 2 times 1. You can't simplify what's inside that square root 13, so you're keeping it just like that. The exact answer, you would get x equals -5 plus the square root of 13 over 2, and you get x equals -5 minus square root of 13 over 2. If we go and put that in the calculator, -5 plus the square root of 13 and then divided by 2, you're going to get an answer of -0.697. If you put the other answer of x equals -5 minus the square root of 13 and then divided by 2, you're going to get -4.30. So those are all the same answers. One is the exact answer, and one is the approximate answer. Let's move on. This one's not in standard form, so I have to add the 1 to both sides and have it equal to 0. So 2x squared minus 5x plus 1 equals 0. Now you could pull apart the a is 2, the b is -5, and the c is 1. Putting it into the formula, x equals opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, we get this. Opposite of b, so the opposite of -5 is 5, plus and minus the square root, b squared, so a -5 squared, minus 4 times a times c. Oops, and that c is a 1. All over 2 times a, and my a was 2. So when I start to simplify, I'm getting 5 plus or minus. I have 25 minus 8, which is 17, all over 4. Another way to write it, compared to our exact answer before, would be like this. So we get x equals, so it's 5 plus the square root of 17 over 4. We can actually write each of those over the 4. So it's 5 plus the square root of 17 over 4. And then we have x equals 5 over 4 minus square root of 17 over 4. So that's another way that you can see it written. If we put those into the calculator, you end up getting an answer of x equals 2.28 and x equals 0.22. Remember, one thing that I had said is this is always a last case scenario if you can't solve it another way. I'm going to save you the trouble with this next one. If factorable, factor. So that 3 times -10 is -30, and then the -13 goes in there. So two numbers that multiply together to be -30 that add up to be -13. And you're getting -15 and +2. Those are going to be each over 3x. That reduces to -5 over 1x. So your factors are the 1x minus 5, and then the 3x plus 2, and that's all equal to 0. You set each of these equal to 0, and when you solve, you get x equals 5, and then x equals negative 2/3. If you didn't recognize that it was factorable and you did the quadratic formula, you're getting the exact same answers. So you would have got x equals 5, x equals negative 2/3, or the approximate would have been 5 and negative 0.667. We didn't fill in those a values in B and C. A would have been 3, B would have been negative 13, and C would have been negative 10. With the last one, I'm going to let you do it. Remember to add this 2 over first. So you're getting 2x squared plus 7x plus 2 equals 0. So your A is 2, B is 7, C is 2. And I will just let you know that you end up getting exact answers of x equals negative 7 plus the square root of 33 over 4, and x equals negative 7 minus the square root of 33 over 4. And then when you put those in the calculator, you get x equals negative 0.31 and x equals negative 3.2. Take a look at those. Have the quadratic formula by your side until you memorize it. Take a look at the links to the songs. Try getting it in your head to where you can memorize it. And message me with any questions. Have a good day.